And welcome back to another edition of the MatStats Show here from the National Wrestling Coaches Association, along with Kevin Hazard and Glenn Gormley. I'm Jason Bryant. And the last time we spoke, guys, we had a lot of anticipation for the postseason coming up. And since then, we've had champions crowned all over the place. Every division's season is over. We've had Clackamas winning in the junior colleges. We've had Campbellsville and McHenry on the women's side. A great race in Division III with Wartburg winning by 1 point. Grandview back at the top of the NAIA, Kearney in Division II, and of course the Nittany Lions of Penn State winning yet another national title in Division I in what was an amazing event in Detroit, Little Caesars Arena. That is one of the best arenas I've ever worked in. And before we get going to what we've been doing the last couple of weeks with the postseason, April 9th was a big day for the sport of wrestling as the NAIA announced that it was going to fully grant championship status to women's wrestling. The NAIA is the first organization to do that. The NCAA has emerging sports status. The junior colleges have a small tournament with the teams that they've got going right now. And this is huge. Kevin, we'll start with you because this is something that we need to get rolling in Virginia. Of course, your current state, my home state, about girls wrestling and funneling in wrestlers to these championships and these teams. And, of course, we've had Marymount add men's and women's wrestling, and they're in Northern Virginia, near your way. So there's a lot of excitement about women's wrestling. So what are your thoughts about the NAIA announcement that came on April 9th?
It was a great announcement. We had our Hall of Fame banquet this past Saturday. And of course, in Virginia, we give a women's wrestler award as part of our banquet. I met with the women's coaches after the banquet. They are so excited. This just gives them more credence, and they're in the process of putting together a proposal to make women's wrestling an emerging sport and then a VHSL sanctioned sport. And they really think they've gotten the ear of the people that they need to have, and it's going to happen. But we're put together a committee, and we should have this done very shortly. We hope.
Glenn, we've talked about the growth of women's wrestling and how championships are done, and now we're going to have to basically say what we did about talking about how the NAIA Women's Championship is done because it was just an invitational the last several years. We have to throw all that out the window because they're going to have to figure out qualifications. They're going to figure out all this stuff, and they're going to do it in the offseason. But this is, again, big because we've spent a lot of time talking about women's wrestling here on the show.
Oh, it's great news that the NAIA is leading the league in this and really doing what they're doing the right thing. And I'm really happy about that April 9th news. And I'm hoping that the NCAA is shortly to follow.
Yeah, with the emerging sports status, we're now 113 teams, I think is where we're at. The NAIA is sitting at 41 and growing, although we've had some unfortunate losses with men's and women's wrestling at Life Pacific being shuttered in Lincoln College in Illinois, closing their institution. So sadly, some of these things still happen, but our growth, looking at what we talked about a couple episodes ago, setting your new point on where the growth meter is. The growth meter is still going through the roof as we're adding programs. We just touched on Marymount, a Division III school in Northern Virginia, adding it, men's and women's wrestling at the NCAA Division III level. And already hiring a coach, Roy Hill, longtime coach at Hayfield Secondary in Northern Virginia. Just a great guy for the sport of wrestling. Has been coaching at Hayfield for 30-some years, Hall of Fame inductee, the Virginia chapter, and former rival coach of both Hazards, Kevin and Brian. So that's something there that's exciting to talk about. And before we get to our topic today, talking about the growth of wrestling at a non-scholarship level, but not in a way you might be expecting, let's just get some general thoughts on the championship season and what it was like for you, starting with you, Kevin.
Well, for me, Division I that's where I keep my primary focus. And it's amazing. I tell you what was amazing this year. Of course, Penn State won, but there were a number of teams, including Oregon State. But Oregon State really stood out because all of a sudden they were very competitive again. You couldn't look past an Oregon State match or you're going to lose. So that was really, really, I said, okay, for my pool, I'm thinking, okay, I can't look past Oregon State wrestling.
We do not advocate gambling. Gambling is illegal at Bushwood, sir. Remember that.
Yeah.
Oh, there's no money. It's strictly
Yes.
for pride.
Always for pride.
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite stories, Jason, I was at the Cliff Keen or NCAA, whatever you want to call it, in Adrian a couple weeks before the men's D1. And I was in the hotel gym, and Coach Steiner, the Olympic coach, was in there also. And this little girl comes in all bundled up. Okay, she has a hoodie on, a hat on. She's trying to make 101. It's Olivia Shore from Tiffin.
Mm-hmm.
She comes up to me a couple hours later in the gym before the finals, and she goes to me, she goes, "What do you think about my hair?" I said, "What do you mean?" Because I couldn't see her because she had all this stuff on. She cut 10 inches of her hair off to make weight, okay? And then this girl goes out in technicals in the finals. I mean, this is why women deserve wrestling. There's intense girls like Olivia Shore out there from Tiffin, a freshman national champ, that, put it all on the line. There's not many 18-year-old girls that chop 10, 12 inches of hair off to make weight. She's one of them.
Kevin, when was the last time you cut 10 inches of hair off your head?
I don't think I've ever had 10 inches of hair on my head, Jason, to cut off.
Thinking, that's not happening.
No, that's not happening. But yeah, and Olivia Shore, she's definitely a scrapper for sure. Now, when we talk about today's topic, we'll pop this up on the screen now because this is something that's intriguing for many, and it's how to grow men's wrestling with a limited or non-scholarship conference. And we're not talking about the non-scholarship schools such as NCAA Division III or the Ivy Leagues, which don't offer athletic scholarships, the service academies, which you can look at it a couple ways. Yeah, they don't offer scholarship, but basically everything, if you get into a service academy, is pretty much a full boat. So take those things out of your mind, and we're going to move forward with this, Glenn. So without further ado, our resident statistician, Glenn's going to take over this particular episode of MatStats like always, and we will roll.
All right, thank you, Jason. The first thing I want to do here is set the bar so everyone kind of understands the dynamics that go on here. Okay, on slide number 2, you can see how many schools or members of the NCAA and NAIA there are. Okay, total NCAA is a little over 1,100, and the NAIA is 252, so that's 1,360 that schools are in the NCAA and NAIA, not in wrestling, as members of that organization. Okay, then you move to the next one. Okay, how many teams do we have, men's wrestling teams, that we either have them or have been announced? Okay, as you can see on slide 3, there's 267 in the NCAA and 346 in the NAIA. 79 in the NAIA, totaling 346. So, Kevin, you can see here what percent of the members have teams as of April 2022. Okay, and you look down there, Kevin, it's pretty standard. The Division I, only 23% of the member schools have teams. And it goes all the way. NAIA is a little higher at 31, but across the board, it's a quarter, 25%. Okay, so now we're thinking, how many schools don't have it? Okay, it's a little bit over 1,000 NCAA and NAI schools that don't have wrestling. This is where Moyer can go fishing. Mike's a fisherman. He can go fishing and catch everything he wants in here, and he's going to catch a lot of schools that need men's wrestling in specifics here. Okay, now, Kevin, you there, buddy?
I am here.
Well, I was first of all, let me interrupt. Kevin was told there would be no math. So you're the math guy. So
okay.
I don't know why you're asking an a guy that can cut people's
I'm trying to work Kevin in here. Conversation.
He'll hit you with one of those 2x4s if you don't keep it up. Anyway.
Yeah. All right, so Kevin, how many wrestlers are there right now in the NCAA and NAIA?
You can
see it on screen 6.
There we
about
go.
30,000.
Yeah, there's 10,000. That's right. There's 10,000 NCAA and NAIA. 7,600 NCAA, almost 2,500 in the NAIA. Now, what I do here to go to this non-scholarship or grant and aid, whatever you want to call it, okay, the roster sizes in 2020, this was the last year we have information before COVID hit, okay, it's 30.7 in the NCAA and 31 in the NAIA. They're almost identical, okay. So what we have here, guys, is the roster sizes in 81, 82 were only 21.8 in the NCAA. They're now 30. Okay. That has grown 41% from 82 to recently, which shows there's a lot more kids on each team, which is good news, okay, for the sport. So if we go to slide number 8 there, okay, it then shows you how many scholarship maximums you can have. 9.9 in NCAA Division I, 9.0 NCAA Division II, 8 in NAIA, and 0 in Division III. Now, since we have about 30 kids on a team, you can do the numbers right there in your head and realize a lot of these kids are not going to have scholarships. Now, as Jason said earlier in the show, the 3 military academies, the 6 Ivies that have wrestling, and all Division III NCAA schools do not have grant and aids. There could be a lot more Division I schools that do the same. So in Xanadu, okay, is when I'm calling Xanadu, it would be like the best case scenario we could have. Okay, there would be in the NCAA and NAIA 8,100 and change of the 10,000 wrestlers would not have scholarships. And you can all figure it out in your head, guys. That's about 80%. If you go to reality, in other words, the number of wrestling scholarships there are in each school, it's about 9,000 of the 10,000 wrestlers that do not have scholarships. Repeat, do not have scholarships. So what this means, guys, is in our realistic world we are in, 90% of all wrestlers do not have scholarships. And even if you go to the big boys, the NCAA Division I, 84% do not have scholarships. So if you are thinking that scholarships are the way to go, you are not informed as well as you could be. And take this MatStats episode. Now, since the largest days, the early 80s of wrestling in NCAA, because NAI doesn't have exact numbers like the NCAA has, you can see on slide 13, the biggest decrease in the number of teams and the number of wrestlers is Division I. Okay, actually, the number of wrestlers in Division II and Division III are higher right now than they've ever been than they were in 1981. There are more Division II wrestlers than there's ever been before. Division III is the second most amount of wrestlers ever. So, what does all this mean? Okay, let's think about a scenario here, guys. And guys like Kevin and I are old enough to remember this, especially with our history with William Mary. If you go to slide 15, there is an example, guys, of a limited / non-scholarship classification helping a sport grow. In 1978, football divided D1 into 2 subcategories, what we all know as 1A or 1AA. This allowed smaller, less funded programs to have competitive football in their classifications. We saw William Mary go from a perennial doormat to a really powerhouse 1AA school. As a matter of fact, our longtime coach who just retired has won more 1AA games than any coach ever. This has allowed more schools to stay in Division I. Okay? Now, football has continued to be the big man on campus. What has happened to football since then? Well, as you can see from slide 16, football has increased 36% the number of D1 teams. However, the 1A schools have decreased 6% and the 1AA schools have increased 150. This has happened, guys, because it's less expensive and more schools can be competitive. So what we can do here, guys, is Look at slide 17, and it shows some of the conferences in 1AA. There's 63 scholarships allowed in 1AA, 85 in 1A, and you can see the Patriot, the NEC, the Ivy, and the Pioneers. All of these are limited or non-scholarships. So what has happened, guys, is let's look at the Pioneer Conference. It is a Division I AA football-only non-scholarship conference. They are invited to the playoffs, and they have won playoff games. University of San Diego, a Pioneer Conference, beat Cal Poly on the road in 2016. Then the next year, they beat a full scholarship Northern Arizona 41-10 at Northern Arizona. Could you imagine being the AD at Northern Arizona, how much that must have stung? The Pioneer Conference has schools all over the country: New York, South Carolina, California, Minnesota, Florida, including Presbyterian and Davidson, who both have wrestling. The Pioneer Conference has more men's wrestling teams than the SEC does. Put that in your hat for a second, guys. Think and consider that. Now, I want to bring in Kevin and Jason here for what we've gone over for some questions and all.
All right, so here's one thing I want to also clarify just for a bit. Not clarify, but just give people some backstory on what the Pioneer is and how some of it's actually its history. So back in the 90s, if you're watching football, I remember watching this on ESPN one time. I was like, what the heck is the Amos Alonzo Stag Bowl from Salem, Virginia? Well, that was where they used to host a Division III football national championship. Well, there was two schools. There was Dayton was taking on Wagner. And I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, it's the first time I'd ever heard of Dayton. So then move forward in college. I was like, wait, Dayton. I've been to the University of Dayton Arena for a women's basketball championship, regional, which my alma mater was the 1 seed, and they shipped them to Dayton. Go figure. Well, in doing that research, I go back in time. I was like, wait a minute, Dayton. They had football. Now they're in a Pioneer. Well, back in the day, you had non-scholarship football teams competing in Division III instead of this current Pioneer Conference, and they created what is called, a lot of people call it the Dayton rule. Like if you're a Division I basketball program, you can't just have all your other sports just kind of hang out in Division III while you collect the Final Four units, the March Madness units. So around that time, that's also around the same time we stopped seeing Division II and Division III wrestlers go to the Division I championships. It was a uniformity of the divisions. We had Prop 48. We had all sorts of things that factored into this: academic requirements, conference realignment shifts, the move to, some people were talking about 1 AAA football, which kind of is what the Pioneer Football League is kind of now, is they used to consider that as an option. Now they use the term 1 AAA as non-football Division I schools, such as Utah Valley, for example. So there's a lot of these things that come into play. So now we're thinking, okay, we had non-scholarship football, and you think to yourself, who the heck would want to play non-scholarship football? Guess what? Look at Division III. That's not scholarship football. Well, the Division I opportunity, it's a unique niche. So Kevin, as a guy that's been a sports fan too, look at it from a miles like, well, why would anybody want to play a sport at the Division I level for non-scholarship? I mean, try to wrap people's heads around the logicness and the rationale of why they would do that.
Well, I tell you, when I looked at it, when we first started talking about this, I didn't realize that if you were a Division I school, you couldn't participate in some sports at a Division II or a Division III level, because it used to be that you could. And then, like you said, they changed it. So this makes just eminent sense. I mean, there are other reasons to go to a school besides sports. So if it's a Division I school and I want to go there for other reasons, now I can, and I can participate on a Division I level. So to me, it just makes a lot of sense.
Well, it also creates some uniformity. Now, granted, personal opinions aside, I think we should, the divisional structure, I believe the Division I model is broken, and that's my personal opinion, not that of the parent organization of said show. But, I'm kind of I don't know if I'm in the minority or not, but I definitely I'm in the camp that I don't believe the Division II and Division III athletes, for example, in wrestling, should have the opportunity to go to Division I because you know what you're getting into. You want to be a Division I champion, you go to a Division I school. It is like that for every single sport now and has been that way since the 90s. So that is kind of my piece on that. And that kind of plays into this discussion a little bit. But Glenn, we're going to get back to the football and the Pioneer League. I don't want to derail us from that the small college.
No problem at all, Jason. I'm glad you had your input. Now, the slide number 19 we're up to now is, will having a limited non-scholarship conference be a logistical nightmare for wrestling? There's no reason to think it will be. Okay, football has overcome this argument. Wrestling is a sport. The EIWA is a wrestling-only conference. Okay, and the rest of our sport is a hybrid of conferences. Big Ten is the only conference with complete membership, and the ACC is the only other conference that does not have affiliate members. Okay, 58% of all schools in Division I wrestling are affiliate members of the conference they qualify for. Okay, this number can grow as more teams jump from Division II to Division III. Okay, now, my thought, then if you go to the next thing, okay, where were these grant and aid schools, come in and stuff like that? There are no grant and aid schools. Well, you can see on that slide, and I got a Princeton shirt hanging up here if you can see it. Give my support to Chris Ayers and all the Princeton boys and Joey Dubuque and Sean Gray. Is the Big Ten had the most by far finalists. Ivies were second in that list with 3 of them. 2 from Princeton, 1 for Cornell. So it's kind of a silly argument to say the non-scholarship people can't compete. Okay. Princeton had more than Iowa did. Think about it. Okay. So the next slide, slide 21, you can see where we are an affiliate member sport. What I just went over, only the Big Ten and ACC have 0 affiliates, members. So there's no reason we can't have a non-scholarship or limited scholarship conference. Okay? That would be an additional conference onto this. So what would happen is we are not a Power 5 conference, guys. You can see on slide 22, only 42% of Power 5 colleges have wrestling. So the schools that Moyer and all the other people are getting to add to college wrestling, whether it be men or women, are either smaller schools, Division II, Division III, NAIA. They're not the big boys, okay? And as you can see on the next slide, only 35% of college men wrestling teams come from a Power 5 conference. So there's no reason to think we can't form a non-scholarship conference, non-scholarship or limited conference, okay, that will then, the winner of that will qualify for the D1 Nationals. Okay? Now, slide 24 goes on to, Gormley's favorite, thing in the world, the Laffer curve. Basically what it shows is stuff with lower expenses grow. Stuff that are expensive don't grow. As we saw in 1A football was going smaller and 1AA was growing. Okay. Everyone goes to Walmart because of low prices. We have had trouble increasing D1 men's wrestling. Your resident statistician here really believes that the creation of a limited / non-scholarship D1 conference will help us increase D1 wrestling, men's, and thereby women. As the 2 Princeton finalists had the shirts on, grow D1 wrestling, women's wrestling, bridge the divide. Okay, this is exactly what I'm talking about here. Kevin and Jason, jump on in with this.
I tell you what I thought. How do you fold them into the mix for the Nationals? That was my first thought. Are they going to be the pigtail match, automatic, or
no? I would say it's just like any
34th?
conference. If they're ranked 3rd in the country, they're the 3 seed.
Bingo.
It's just like the Ivies coming through the IWA. They're on scholarship. There'd be no difference other than, if I understand Glenn's plan right, is That's just, they're qualifying this way. This is the non-scholarship division. It's the Pioneer Wrestling League, for lack of a better term, and this is their qualifier. You know, they're going to have the same. They're going to be built in the same way. It's not like, okay, you get thrown the number 33 because that's what conference you're in. No, well, sometimes the 33 seed comes from the Big 12. Sometimes it comes from the Ivy. Sometimes it comes from the SoCon. Sometimes it comes from the ACC.
Exactly.
Under
Jason,
the current situation, I don't think anything changes other than, hey, there's a qualifying system there.
Yeah, that's my plan. Just like that. Just like there were 2 non-scholarship Ivy League kids at 125 seeded second and third in the semis. That's where they should have been seated, you know, based on the performance of the year. And the same thing with, as Jason said, the Pioneer Wrestling Conference, or whatever we want to call it here. Okay. And it would just be another way to qualify. There's plenty of options too of these. What happens if Jason, Gormley, and Hazard's alma maters had given our teams choices of being a non-scholarship team? Would we still have them? I don't know. You know, but it's worth a conversation.
Not with the leadership in Norfolk, because they're about off the rails as you can get, because they created gender equity problems where there wasn't gender equity problems. But anyway, that's another entirely that's another drum to beat.
Who knows about specifics of that school in Norfolk or that school in Williamsburg, as Bryant Hazard so eloquently put it, all nationals. But there's an opportunity there, guys, for Moyer to go to schools and say, hey, you can actually win your conference, you know, and the AD can be proud to have a conference winning thing. And of course, with us being an affiliate member sport, the AD and college president have no arguments. Well, that's not the conference we're in. I mean, think about it. One of the schools I wrestled at, Tennessee, our women's rowing team is in the Big 12. Okay, so if an SEC school can do that, I mean, you know, Mizzou is in a different conference every year in wrestling, it seems. In the last 10 years, they've been in 3 conferences.
Kentucky men's soccer just joined the Sun Belt.
Who did?
Kentucky men's.
Okay, I did not know that. Thank you for that.
Yeah, that's this week. Yeah, I mean, there's the Sun Belt added a couple affiliates because they kind of poached Conference USA, and then Conference USA had a bunch. You want to talk about affiliate sports? Men's soccer too is another case study to look at as well.
Another case in that. Now, one of the things I've been getting from people, I've been pushing this idea, non-scholarship, limited scholarship, for decades now. One of the things I've been getting is, well, then these kids can't go to college. Well, you know what? On slide 25, it shows a lot of stuff there. Basically, federal financial aid is used in so many cases. If a wrestler cannot afford college, they turn to federal aid or institutional aid. No reason to think they can't go to a college and wrestle that does not provide a grant and aid. Slide 26 then shows you about 85% of people, by the way, get federal some type of aid. Slide 26 shows you the amount of endowment the AD or college president will ask you to raise, as in that school in Williamsburg that asked, you know, us, our alumni base, to raise. We have the average cost for room, board, tuition, books, the whole 9 yards. They're private, state, out-of-state kids, in state school, in-state. Okay. Then the maximum grant and aid, the total grant and aid cost, and then the endowment needed to fund that each year. That's about a 3.5% return. You're going to get some guy that go to you, well, I could get 7 to 10%. Yeah, but you don't understand numbers because you have to raise the endowment each year because there's high inflation in all college costs that we all know. Okay, so in other words, a private school needs over $14 million in endowment. Okay, the Gormley plan here to have a no scholarship conference, you're saving that money. You're taking out of the equation anybody's thought of eliminating to talk to you because they know you can't raise between 7 and 14 million depending on the school's tuition there. So once again, we'll go to slide 27 and it shows you the numbers. $150 billion to 13 million students in federal grant money in 2020. Institutions provided another, that should be 71.1 billion. Okay. 71.1, sorry about that. to the students. Okay. In addition, more than 12 million students get college loans. So 86% of all students are getting some type of financial aid. We are using Uncle Sam to help finance your education. Kevin and Jason, back in.
Well, as somebody who spent 7 years as an undergrad and having, granted to my credit, I didn't have loans the entire time. I did actually work through that. But I think that's one thing too, is one thing to worry about is the concern about, I guess how do we dispel the loan questions? Like, well, students are coming out with all sorts of crazy loan debt as they graduate, and it's people saying, well, I'm going to go to a trade school, I'm going to do that, I'm going to get a job instead of work on student loan debt. So my question would be, how do you combat that comparison? It's like, well, we're not getting granted aid. We're just basically putting ourselves into debt to wrestle. I think that would be a logical question to this.
You want my answer
proposal.
to that, Jason?
Yes, I am. I do want to hear it.
Join the military for a couple years and then Uncle Sam pays for it.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, I know you're talking to a guy that never served one day. By the way, that's a misprint on slide 27. It should be 71.1 billion with a B, not N.
Kevin, what do you got?
Mistake there. But, Jason, that is a good thought situation, what you're saying. But as you can see from slide 27, between the federal financial aid and the institutional, that's about 17,000. Okay. And the average cost of an in-state school is 25,000. Okay. There's a gap there. There's no question.
I'm also going to bring up one thing to consider to the parents that may be listening to this and kind of, well, wait a minute. Coaches and parents, see, all of this stuff is kind of a wash if you got the grades to get into school and you can get the academic money and the school grants. Because I know that school in Norfolk, for example, was able to get high quality wrestlers on academic aid. And again, that's key to the school wherever you're at, if they hit certain boards and they hit certain GPAs in their core classes. So the ultimate point of getting into schools to get an education, yeah, you go to wrestle, but a lot of these scholarship questions and non-scholarship, they get answered by simply doing the classwork. You don't even have to join the military. Do the classwork. You pick your spot. You pick your place, whether it be scholarship or non-scholarship. So, Kevin, as a guy who's been coaching and educating wrestlers for generations now, I mean, what are your thoughts here on the scholarship options and the opportunities to go?
The first thing I thought of was Liberty. They have right now a first-class wrestling program. They're not in NCAA or they're in the National Collegiate Wrestling Association. But I wonder if this was an option when they dropped their program, whether they'd still be a D1 school. I mean, I think there's enough places out there and coaches out there that this could be viable right away.
Yeah, I think it would be viable. I know with Liberty, I remember talking to their ADs back when they dropped, they brought the sport back and then they dropped it, and they actually chose to comply with a different prong of Title IX, even though they were in compliance. They chose to comply with something else, and it was like that was one that was a head scratcher. Maybe with some new administration there, maybe they can revisit the thing, because they haven't let Coach Castro go. He's actually also an inductee in the Virginia chapter of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame. He was in my class, and Liberty's club program, and club is in air quotes because they support that team, and it'd be great to get them back as a Division I school. But again, I think when they got all the influx of money from a lot of their online campuses or their online stuff, it's like they added too many women's sports too fast. Whereas if they'd have spread them out, they'd have been able to satisfy prong two, and they might have still had wrestling. So again, sometimes bad administrations cost kids their opportunities, which drives me nuts. But that's another side note. But that was to the Liberty point, and Kevin, I think that would have been a great thing to bring up at the time.
One of the interesting things too that I run into conversation with people, they just keep on saying, well, you can't have a non-scholarship conference because people couldn't afford it. Okay, let's just say that's true. Adding a non-scholarship conference doesn't hurt anybody, right? Because if somebody can't afford the school for whatever reason, or can't get into a school academically, whatever reason, adding that conference doesn't hurt anything. It gives other kids chances. They could either get financial aid or afford it. So I think I love what Kevin's saying, as Liberty is an example, that I believe we are opening the door to more kids being able to wrestle in school.
Yeah, and I think we need to look at the.
You pair that.
Good.
You pair that with the fact that 75% the Division I schools don't have wrestling. I think it's a huge opportunity.
Correct.
All right, Glenn, what do we got coming up?
Okay, what we got coming up, Kevin gave us a great introduction on that. The next show, which will be Wednesday, May 18th, 2022 at 3 p.m., the topic's going to be the National Collegiate Wrestling Association, and the acronym, of course, is the NCWA. That is the third organization that sponsors the world's oldest and greatest sport. The most well-known one is the NCAA, then the NAIA, then the NCAA. This show is going to deal with how the NCAA can help the NCAA and NAIA grow and start new intercollegiate varsity teams. It's just a different organization, guys. And Kevin's been one of the biggest proponents of this organization since I've known him. So that's what we're going to do next month, guys.
Yeah, I look forward to that one too, because we're back in my old neighborhood, the Newport News Apprentice School. And how it's not just club, and that's another thing. The C is not club, and of course we're going to have some real fun with the alphabet soup, because so many times NCWA and NWCA have been interchanged incorrectly with one another. But just to give you a little preview, the Newport News Apprentice School is a varsity wrestling program, has been a varsity wrestling program since the dawn of time. But it's a trade school that pays their athletes. It's owned. I don't even know who owns Newport News, what used to be known as Newport News Shipbuilding, Northrop Grumman for a while, Huntington Ingalls. My mom worked there for a long time. I really don't know what it is, because I left 15 years ago. But it's a trade school, and it pays their athletes, which the NIL is going to be an interesting door open on that. But they were not eligible for NCAA championships. They were an affiliate of the NCAA for a long time. They're eligible to compete against NCAA schools, but the NCWA, for example, filled a need for that particular school, and it's also been great for the club teams. There's two divisions within it, and again, this is prefacing it. I'm not giving the entire show away, but it's something that I'm looking forward to talking about, because Jim Junta down in Texas has been a great ambassador for the sport of wrestling, providing a lot of opportunities for our next generation of coaches. We talk about Division II and Division III being where our coaches come from. Well, in some of these areas where there's not even wrestling programs, it's been the club programs. It's been the varsity programs that are in no man's land. Like, Grays Harbor, for example, is like, well, we're up here. We're junior. We don't want to go to junior college because we have 4-year programs and we have 2-year programs. There's so many different moving parts, and they really do kind of catch the where are we at schools in that. So I'm looking forward to that. So Glenn, finish this up.
Okay, guys. It was a great month recently since we last talked on the shows, seeing the women's and men's Division I, II, III NAIA championships, guys. This is why we love the sport so much, going to these things. And we will see you guys. This is for Glenn Gormley and
Kevin Hazard.
And
I guess Jason Bryant. That's who I am.
Okay, great, guys. We will see you for episode number 9, MatStats next month.